The price of freedom is death. We're coming to get our check.
Black First brothers and sisters. Tonight we have a very special guest. We have future mayor, the Chicago mayor candidate, Jamal Green, and we allow him to introduce himself. Jamal, how are you feeling today?
I'm good. It's Jamal too. I got to correct you.
Jamal, I'm sorry. Apologize.
It's all good, man. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. All the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Can you, for the audience sake, if they haven't heard of you or some of the accomplishments that you've done throughout your, activism career, can you briefly explain some of that so the audience can get somewhat familiar with you?
Well, I've always been on the front lines for justice for our people for many years. As young as 15 years old, leading peace marches throughout the community, inspiring young people to reach their fullest potential, being able to put the guns down ambassador at 18, going on to then lead the Laquan McDonald movement, in which a young man was shot 16 times. We fought each and every day, protested to change the dynamic of politics in the state, which we have done. Most of the people in this state and political offices are changed because of that movement that was very hot and constant protests each and every day, fighting against the establishment for what had happened for this young Black boy to get shot 16 times. From then on, many different families I've represented in regards to cases where police officers have killed them. I've also put up thousands of dollars in reward money for folks, who have died at the hands of someone else in the communities. Chase Bank in 2020 was redlining, was shown to have redlined Chicago communities on the south and west sides from 2012 to 2018. They were only lending to those communities 1.9% at the time. So I stepped up, called and put together some organizers and said, we're going to shut down these branches. We're going to get their attention. They told me that I was crazy, that Chase wouldn't pay me any attention. We went into every branch, shut each branch down, told everybody you couldn't have any more transactions, and you had to exit, to the tune of shutting off almost over 35 branches for 4 days. And Chase came to the table, and they banned me from every Chase in America because we wouldn't stop. And then they ended up moving forward for a plan to give back $1 billion for the next 5 years. We demanded $1 billion in reparations, but that $1 billion package is grants, jobs, as well as loans, and it's still not enough. But we were able to get some form of some piece of something from the largest bank in America. So I've always stood on the front lines, making sure that the most vulnerable folks in our city have what they need, whether it is spending thousands of dollars to make sure that folks got groceries, or make sure that the kids have toys, or it's our home ownership organization making sure folks can become homeowners and build generational wealth. So that's about me and a lot of my community organizing background, and as well as a serial entrepreneur and investing into Black-owned businesses who didn't have the capital to start, or the business expertise, and me investing and helping them grow and open and grow.
Oh, well, I want to tip my hat to you. If I was wearing one, I would definitely tip my hat to you and salute you for all of the work that you have been doing, because that is some very impressive work, and a lot of people appreciate that, and that's much needed. And you said one key word which sparks a big question that I have. You said the word reparations, and recently in California they were having a discussion of paying out, and this is a statewide, not the federal government, but just the subject of paying reparations. So a lot of people have asked me to ask you if you would support lineage-based reparations for the descendants of American slaves in the form of cash payments.
100%. I've already pledged support for that in the past. It's just about what it looks like, right? I think I looked at other cities and how They've done certain little things around reparations. The closest city to us who've done something in Chicago is Evanston. And they've come up with their own like little form of what they think reparations should look like, and how to make it
Mhm.
happen. And as mayor, we're gonna have to do the same thing. Honestly, I believe that we need an office like solely for to enhance the lives of descendants of slaves, and that's something that's never been moved forward, and that's something that I would support as mayor. Is we got an office of everyone else. We got an office of new Americans. We got an office for other ethnic groups. But we don't have an office to enhance the lives of those who built this country, and really built it on free labor and made everyone rich. These banks and corporations and the government, and still to this day are oppressed, and the majority of folks in prison for petty crimes, and they're making money now off marijuana, billions of dollars off marijuana, and we haven't even got 100 million that went to anything black since it's been legalized in many other states. So the reality is that we are owed 100%, and it's just about what that looks like on the city, state, and federal level. But on a city level, I think that we definitely need to figure out what that looks like on a city level, as well as give an office, dedicate a full office to enhancing the lives of descendants of slaves, and making all of the departments coordinate to do so.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to move on to the next question because I want to get a few of these questions out here. I understand we don't have too much time. So moving on to one of the questions, it is Rahm Emanuel closed over 50 schools, and the most of those schools never reopened. What plan do you have what plan do you have in place to repair the education system? Do you have, and the follow up is, do you have any plans on reopening any of the abandoned schools in Chicago?
So that's a loaded question. We'll be all day with that. Let me just say what Rahm Emanuel did, what he was allowed to do, was a travesty. It is totally disgusting that he was able to shut down over 50 black schools. And still to this day, 10 years later, they're still here in our communities, not developed into anything, not repurposed into anything. The education system in Chicago is one of the worst in the country. They're failing kids each and every day. They designate $30,000 per kid, but you don't see $30,000 going into that classroom. CPS is just a system where privatizers are getting rich. They privatize the food. They privatize, the cleanliness of our schools. And what happens is our schools are still rodent infested. There's no healthy nutrition, the outdated books. Everybody's getting rich, but our kids are not getting smart. Our kids are not getting taught. It's utterly disgusting. What needs to happen is we need to start to change some of the legislation in place with CPS. One of them is, it's still based off of enrollment-based formula. So if a kid goes to the school, then they'll get money. If the kid leaves that school, they'll lose money. That needs to change, right? We need to have a needs-based formula where we're investing into every school, creating an institution where anyone wants to send their kid. You should know that no matter what neighborhood you go to, that this school is going to have these resources and this type of investment, that these schools are going to have after school programming and trade and tech hubs and mental health and clinical staff members fully staffed with a good ratio from them to students, that the classrooms are not going to be 30 and 40 kids a classroom. There should be a certain standard for every school, and we're going to have to meet that standard. We're going to have to do a forensic audit on CPS books so that we can see what all of this wasted money is. We got to remove the privatizers out of CPS and get rid of their contracts and start to create better paying, good paying jobs for those folks to come in and clean our schools and cook our food, that are actually from the communities and really care about our kids. There's a lot of work that we have to do. Another things that we must do is we got to introduce a universal 3K plan where 3-year-old kids are starting school throughout the city of Chicago and getting the investment that they need so that they have a better future. And that's one of the things that we presented as well. So CPS is such a loaded question. I'll be all day. I was a kid that failed in CPS. Kids are being failed each and every day. It's one of my top priorities to make sure that every one of our kids, most of our kids are smarter than Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and they need the investment in institutions that invest in them because they can build electric cars, they can be pilots and build planes and build Amazons. They can do all of these great things. I know many young people who have it in them and are currently doing stuff like it, just not at scale. We need institutions that are invested in them, putting them in programs and giving them capital coming out so that they can take a risk and really build the wealth that they should be building.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I know you've been recently you came out with your safety plan because in recent time we've had it is Chicago, so I'm not going to say recent, but we've had a disturbing number of violent crime in Chicago. And a lot of people say that what needs to happen is we need to increase the police budget and the police presence and the police force. And you have a different plan. You have a different strategy. So can you go into that?
Well, here's the thing. We need to get folks to understand that if they want public safety, never talk about police first. All right. Public safety does not begin with police. At the end of the day, we must make sure that we're investing into people and investing into communities, and we're getting rid of poverty. You know, a lot of folks don't like saying that word, right? In politics, poverty, but we need to say it so that you understand that there are people, thousands of people in these neighborhoods who can barely find something to eat, who barely can afford any rent, who are homeless, who are living in these conditions. And then, you know, we expect them to be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps when they don't have any boots, right? And so the reality is that we look at public safety as so the name of our plan. I'll just go into the name of our plan is called EPIC, right? EPIC stands for economic prosperity, prevention, intervention, and then CPD reform. Right. And so the first tab is economic prosperity. That's the first thing I'm going to talk about when I talk about public safety. Why? Is because if you don't have prosperous neighborhoods, then you will not have productive people. That's just the reality of the situation. When you go to Lincoln Park, the home ownership rate is in the high 70 percentile. The businesses, there are none occupied. The quality of education is high. Folks are jogging up and down and have all of the resources they need. The dogs are really nice and nicer than they are, you know, in other neighborhoods.
That's true. That is a fact.
Right. This is the reality of these communities. Why? And then you make a phone call to police. You got one officer in a vehicle. You're not going to have 2-3 cars come into a scene. You might have one car pop up with one officer. Why aren't there a lot of officers in Lincoln Park? Because the investment is in Lincoln Park, and you have more productive people who are homeowners, who have middle-class jobs, who send their kids to good school, who are able to have everything that they need in their neighborhood. That should be the case for everyone. When you talk about economic prosperity, we must back home loans so we can repopulate these neighborhoods and let folks own their homes in these neighborhoods so we have more stakeholders on the block. We must create new small businesses and make the first business license free in those underserved communities so they can open up a business and waive fees and streamline permitting and licensing and zoning so that they can open up a business in 30 days and 60 days in record time. We must incentivize folks to develop on our vacant lots. Within a year, we'll give them a 10-year tax break so that they can develop in fast time and we can start doing something with our lots. We also have a prosperity push pilot, which is to push folks out of poverty, in which, you know, we will give 10,000 people $1,000 a month who pass a financial literacy class. And within 90 days, they do one of the following: obtain a job opportunity. We'll help them obtain housing, substance abuse if they have a substance abuse problem, or educational enrollment if we want them to get back in school. And if they do one of those 4 things, we'll give them $1,000 a month to help get them to the next phase of their life, to give them a foundation so that we can push them, help push them out of poverty, and they can start living healthy, sustainable lives. So economic prosperity is number one, right? Creating jobs, good paying jobs. We got lead pipes all throughout our city of Chicago. We don't have clean water, 380,000 lead pipes, and most of them are in underserved communities. So that means Black children are literally drinking lead each and every day, and you don't know how it's affecting their brain. Why don't we have a massive jobs program, right? And that's why it's so important to have these apprenticeships and trade and schools and things of that sort, so that we have folks coming through the pipeline, and we have a massive jobs program where we certify folks in the neighborhoods to help change these pipes, right? You know, we have the opportunity to be innovative and do things that have never been done, and folks need an alternative. So when you talk about prevention, it's about teaching kids early, like I talked about in Universal 3K. It's about giving kids, making sure every young person is never on the street of Chicago. How can you do that? Schools need to be open throughout the day and on weekends with programming, right? Which I talked about, after school programming, mentoring, tech, trade, all type of programming throughout our schools. Then we must have an apprenticeship program that the city pays for year round, starting at 13 years old. They'll be able to work at a business or corporation, and we'll pay for it, where they'll be learning a skill and off of the streets, right? So our kids should never be not tired, right? We need them either at an apprenticeship and getting skills, or in a program at their school. And by the time they're done, it'll be evening time, and it'll be transporting them home. And once they get home, they're going to sleep and going back to school in the morning, doing this all over again. We need to create those alternatives and get these young people mind right. And another one of the things I'll talk about is our youth intervention department, in which we will have a department of youth interventionists that put young people on the right path. So if they drop out, they get arrested, then a youth interventionist's job will be to put that young person on the right path, give them free counseling, housing, a job opportunity, analyze their whole life situation, and give them the resources that they need. Instead of them keep going through juvie, we can mandate them to a mentoring organization. They need the resources to get put on the right path. And some of the other things, and I would be all day, reopening up our mental health clinics, reentry program for those folks who come home, unarmed social workers to respond to mental health calls and homelessness instead of police. There's a lot of great things in our EPIC plan, and you can read it at gogreenchicago.com.
Okay. And so you all know, I do have his email in the description below. So you guys can find out all of his social media and all of his campaign details in the email below. But I want to move on to the next question I have in the list. Recently, I had a broadcast talking about a lot of the Black people, specifically, really solely the Black people getting gentrified in Chicago. We have there was protests recently because there was an influx of illegal immigrants who were taking over elementary school, or who were going to be sheltering in an elementary school. There was another case in the South Shore where a lot of people fear gentrification, and the price of housing has gone up in Chicago. So do you have any plan to combat that?
We got a plan on all of those different things. One of the things is, we're a sanctuary city because of here in Washington, right? And I know you talked about the migrants coming in town. And one of the things and the problems of the folks in the neighborhoods, they feel like we're not a sanctuary to the folks that are here, right? We got folks laying under bridges. We got folks who could barely pay their property taxes, getting evicted. Single mothers barely can make ends meet. We got problems right here in our city, and people want that support and that investment. And frankly, they're correct, right? We need to make sure that we're a sanctuary for those who are here. Instead of playing politics and leaving folks to be oppressed and without resources, and then politically, because of what's happening in the time, we're constantly spending resources on those who are sent to us from the outside. I'm okay with us being a welcoming city, but we must be welcoming to the people that are here. And that is the number one thing that must happen. So when you talk about housing, there's a lot of things that we must do in housing. That's one of our biggest policies. And that's why when I talk about home ownership, I talk about using a single family mortgage bond to back 10,000 home loans a year on a city level. And those home loans would be for folks who have roots in those communities. So you've been there, you're there right now, you've moved to the suburbs, Houston, et cetera, and you can show that these are where your roots were, or you've stayed in those neighborhoods for a period of time. You will get first dibs on those home loans, not someone else, right? We want to get those folks who are from the communities to be able to stay in communities or to come back home. To own a home and be stakeholders on those blocks. We also want to create a public bank, right? We can have a public bank in the city of Chicago in which the public bank invests in people in the communities, in home loans, small businesses, et cetera. And all that profit that comes back to the city bank goes back to city services. And then that bank will be such a good tool for us to pilot lots of different programs in the communities for small businesses, for renters who are getting evicted. We can come up with many different funds under that bank to really serve the underserved communities. And that's why I really want to start that bank, is because the private banks aren't investing in us. The private banks redline us. They invest in private prisons and then take our deposits, and they won't even give us a home loan in our neighborhoods. They won't even give us, you can't go to Chase Bank and get a small business loan in no Black community in this country. And so we need a city-owned public bank that will be held accountable, and we can make sure are investing into the most underserved communities with non-traditional financing. So that's another one of the things. We also need to create affordable housing units in record time, right? They promised after the projects were knocked down, they promised tens of thousands of units they've never built. We're 120,000 units behind, way more than that. Actually, that was a report probably a year ago. And so we need to build affordable housing units in record time and make sure that folks can stay in any community in the city of Chicago. So we would incentivize box stores and single floor big buildings to build affordable units on top of them. We would also use the city-owned properties that we have and look to acquire some private ones that are abandoned and haven't been used and turn them into affordable housing units. Our main goal is how do we create them in record time? And that's what we're going to do, and give back all of those vouchers to those folks who've been waiting all these years, who were in those projects. They have first dibs at these homes, and we're going to make good on the promises that were made.
Okay, thank you. Now, I understand we're short for time, but this is a question that a lot of people are going to ask. Recently, there's been a, I guess, exposure of a police officer who was connected to the Proud Boys, which for the audience is a white supremacist
immediately. He will be fired immediately, and we will have a zero tolerance for any police officer attached to any hate group. Any police officer that is shown with a public comment, a certain, if it's a Proud Boy tattoo on his arm, we need to put in place a measure to where if you are attached in any way to any hate group, to anything hateful towards minorities, you will be immediately fired. That needs to be the case, and that'll be the case under our administration.
Okay. So I understand that you have something you have to take care of. Is there anything you would like to say to the audience before we let you go? Any message? So his email is, for the people just coming in, his email is in the description, so you guys can check that out when you're done.
Let me say this. One of the key things that we must do, right? And I love all of the groups around the country that are fighting for different causes, especially fighting for folks who look like me and continuing the legacy of our ancestors and things of that sort, as I was taught. We got to come together, right? That's one of the biggest things that we must do. And when come together, unity means is we have to find some commonality. We got to support each other. We have to put in folks into these political seats. I'm not a politician and I hate politics, but I know that this is the avenue that I can take to be able to have some form of liberation for our people and make things better for the next generation of Chicagoans and for my kids and your kids, right? And at the end of the day, we must also fund our candidates and make sure that we're donating to them and making calls for them. We got to do the work, right? And that's one of the things that my message to all of the folks that are listening is: let's do the work, let's come together, and let's get what needs to be done. And some of the methods and the pathways that some people take, you might not agree with, right? There's a lot of folks in the movement that's like, oh, heck no, JR, why are you going into politics? You've been activist and radical all these years. That's going to corrupt you, and that's going yada, yada, yada. We got to understand that there's pathways for everyone, and there's pathways for the movement to get at least some of the things that they've been fighting for. And I'm willing to make sure that we get those wins under our leadership and our administration. So you can go to gogreenchicago.com to support, to donate, to volunteer, to support our campaign in any way. That's gogreenchicago.com, and follow us so you can see the campaign for the next 43 days. And I just want to thank you, James, and Afro Elite for having us, and I can't wait to come back.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for being here. For you all, his email, and after this I'm going to put his Instagram and his Twitter and stuff like that, so you all can follow him on his social media. You can check that out, but his email is there with all of the information you might have to donate or to volunteer to, anything. So you guys can check that out. Jamal Green, thank you for being here. Thank you for everything that you've done. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Bye.
No problem. Well, brothers and sisters, that was Jamal Green running for Chicago mayor. He had I know there were some questions that were sent. I tried to get the major questions out because he had another engagement. So this was the time that we had set because it's close to the election time. So we could make this time for it. So we did. Please make sure before you all leave that you guys subscribe to this channel, leave a like. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on anything. Leave a like and share this on your various social media on your various social media pages. And then leave a comment. Let me know what you guys thought about the interview. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you all for being here. We have, let me see. We have AE in here. I saw Naturally Tora was in here. Who else is in here? Bruce is in here. Cynthia's in here. Shots on Target. Antoinette. Judah Queen. DBS. I appreciate every single last one of you all. I'm not going to scroll all the way up, but I appreciate every single last one of you all for being here with us today. We will have more content coming up soon. Hopefully he'll be able to come back so we can answer further questions that you all have. I appreciate that. You all have a good day. Happy MLK Day. Salute to our ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King. You all have a good one on this MLK holiday. So thank you all for being here. I got the old outro. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. With that being said, salute to you all. I'm out.